Morning, YouTube. I think I did it correctly this time. It looks like you're on a little bit of a delay, so I'll wait for everybody to catch up. But happy SDR week. Welcome to the last day. I'm super excited to have Jason Bay. I'm even more excited that I didn't screw up today and push this live twice. You can actually find, or at least this morning, that video was still live on YouTube of me doing the intro to yesterday's video twice, which was, yeah, that was a good feeling. But we're off to a better start today. We've got a phenomenal guest. I'm really excited. Jason Bay, founder, chief prospecting officer at Blissful Prospecting. Today we're talking about how to defeat your toughest prospecting objections. We have the least amount of agenda possible so that we can be here for you to help you work through some of your objections. So if you've got an objection, you don't have to put it in chat now, but I want you to go find it. And then I want you to throw a one in chat and let me know if you have an objection that you want us to get to so that Veronica and Mero can keep track of that and make sure that we get to you. So with that being said, Jason, welcome to the show. Welcome to the stream. Welcome to SDR week. Thank you for showing up. Thanks for being here.
Dude, yeah, I always fun to collaborate with you, man. I even buzzed the head again yesterday. I normally only buzz the head once a week. Did it yesterday. I'm clean shaven, man. I got the polka dot shirt on. Good to go, dude.
Nice. I put on a tie for you. I've been wearing. I wore one on the first day, and I thought, you know what, we're going out with a bang, so I'll put the tie back on. I even got a little pocket square too. I mean,
Dude, love it. You're
yeah.
looking sharp, man.
Thanks. I appreciate you having power and water for this one, and
Yeah.
that's a nice, kind of critical for a stream such as this.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was for the rest of you guys, I was talking to Colin. I live in Austin, Texas, so we didn't have running water a couple weeks ago for like 6 days, and the way I opened up all of our meetings was like, good thing you can't smell me right now because it's like it's not a good situation. So I'm glad we got water, we got power, like we're good to go, man.
Right on. It was funny enough. Not that it was any near the scale that Austin had it, but I was sweating last night because we were feeding the kids dinner and we lost power here.
Oh
And
no.
like and I was really smart and also a dummy at the same time because I have a UPS, like a battery backup here underneath my computer, everything hooked in, that I think if I turned most of the things off, I could probably limp through the rest of a stream. However, when the power went out, I realized last night that while my Wi-Fi box is here, the router or the modem itself is downstairs and not attached to a battery backup. So we had Wi-Fi but no internet. And I was like, I feel like the dumbest person in the world right now. So I've got another UPS on the way because, yeah, if we lose power, which has happened before, the whole stream goes down and then everybody goes home. So everybody, welcome to the stream. Today we are talking about objections. And I mean, we're basically going to go through how to avoid that infinite loop of I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. When a prospect sort of throws something up and just say, well, no, that's not true. I don't know if you know this, but that's not actually the best way to handle an objection. We are not Jedis. We can't just magically wave these away. We're going to talk about how empathy plays a pretty critical role, and we're going to talk about Jason's EVO framework. Now, is this EVO by Mitsubishi? This is like a super fast rally car kind of thing? Is that the evolution of it, so to speak?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, EVO is it's a empathize, validate, offer. So it's an acronym. But you mentioned something I think that's super important. I like to use the term like deflating objections. Like if you think about like a balloon, a lot of times when a prospect says something to us, not interested, let's say for example, like our gut reaction can be, well, how could you not be interested when you don't know like even why I'm calling, for example. And we get kind of almost confrontational with them and it adds air to the balloon and it really creates this environment where there's like tension.
Yeah, because they're
And what
wrong.
we
The
want to do is
jerks.
like,
How dare they?
yeah. And what we want to really try to do is like take air out of the balloon. We want to try to like de-escalate because it doesn't matter. I mean, there's that old school saying in sales that people buy based on emotion and then justify with logic. Well, there's actually a lot of psychology supporting that. And it doesn't matter how much better your solution is like logically maybe than what they're already using if they're in a state where they're like completely armed and don't want to listen to you. So the goal there is to kind of like, how do we disarm them, get them into a state where they would actually like even entertain the idea of listening to us.
Fantastic. And it's such a great point because I think in my early sales career, especially if you're in the early stages of booking a meeting, one wrong step and they're gone, right? And especially if we're talking about prospecting, you've got a decision maker on the phone. This is rare time that we're dealing with. A couple small tweaks to how you handle these objections can have enormous consequences on our quotas. Talk to me a little bit about that. Is this what you refer to as that sort of the infinite loop of, they give you the objection and we're like, well, no, you're wrong. Objection, wrong.
Yeah.
And we're not really validating. And so this is your solution to just suck a little air out of the balloon.
Yeah, here, let me share. And we were having a little bit of technical fun with this earlier, so we'll see if this works this time here. All right, cool. You can see screen, Colin? Awesome.
Got it.
So this is the first framework. So there's two frameworks. Not going to overwhelm you guys with frameworks today, but I like being visual with how we're talking about this stuff. So you can see like this like infinity loop. And if you have like the prospect on this side, and then you have like you on this side, let's use a really easy one to get started. So let's say the prospect says not interested. Early in your sales career, Colin, how did that make you feel when you were cold calling and someone said not interested to you? Like, what were some of the stuff that was going through your head?
Click next. If I'm being totally honest about it, I wish I had a better answer, but I think probably if we're talking genuinely early in my career, like I started in college in a sales role, and if they said not interested, I went, okay, thank you.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
So
I was a
you were
terrible
kind of
sales
like,
rep when I saw it. It's a miracle I'm still alive and able to feed myself.
so you took no for an answer, it sounds like, and you're like, I'm just gonna move on, dude. I'll talk to someone else that's interested, which is actually something to that. I can't see you guys on the live stream. What I would love to hear though, if you could put in the comments, how do you feel when someone says not interested to you? What are some of the things that are going through your head?
And
How does it make you feel? What are you thinking?
back me up here. Throw a 9 in chat if you did the same thing. If you have at one point done the same thing as me and just said they say not interested, and I'm like, okay,
Okay, goodbye.
okay, thanks.
And I can't see the chat, Colin, so let me know if there's like anything coming in here.
Yeah.
And if people are chiming in with anything.
I think there is about a 10-second delay from when we kicked off, so we'll have to give comments just a little bit to let them sort of sink in for a little bit. But yeah, keep going.
Okay. So I would love to hear what you feel when you get not interested, but a lot of times this is what I hear. Someone says not interested, and we immediately feel like almost like misunderstood because we're thinking like, well, dude, how could you not be interested in this when I haven't even told you like why I'm calling or what we do, or hey, I did all of this research on you. Like, I don't get a chance to say any of that. Like, how could you not be interested? I even had a client, this is earlier last year, prior to COVID, and I was doing a one-on-one coaching call with him actually. His name was Mike. And it like triggered him when we were role playing and I cut him off and said not interested. Like he took it very personally. And oftentimes when this happens, prospect gives us this not interested, we feel misunderstood, and then we come back with like a rebuttal. And we might use something like old school, like feel, felt, found, for example, which I think is a really old school technique, which if you can actually use the feel, felt, found in a way that sounds organic, it's not bad. But what we might say is, well, hey, another client that I was working with 3 months ago, they felt the same way, or they were feeling the same way. And then after I talked to them, they felt this, and here's what happened. And the prospect the entire time is thinking like, dude, what's wrong with you? I told you that I was not interested. I don't have time. They end up feeling misunderstood too. Mm-hmm. And it's this like, is Colin listening to me right now? Like, is this a person that I'm talking to? And it essentially goes into, and you sort of alluded to this, we can kind of get in this mode sometimes as salespeople where we're not saying this directly, but we're kind of saying I'm right, and the prospect, they have the ultimate power. They're like, dude, no, actually I'm right, and I'm going to hang up the phone now. So the way that we can break this cycle here is just with a little bit of empathy. So if we empathize with the prospect first and actually acknowledge them, that goes a really long ways. So we need to make them feel like it's okay that they're not interested. And I want to go ahead and pause there. Any thoughts on this calling before we move to like kind of the framework of like the how to actually respond to this?
Yeah, it was funny. I was thinking back to like objections that I've received, and especially like, and you're totally right. Most of them have been. We got a lot of nines in chat, so thanks for your support. I
Cool.
appreciate the. Yeah, this is a very supportive chat today. I like it. I was thinking there was two instances that sort of came to mind, and one was when I was cold calling, and again, I'm fully cards on the table admitting I was a terrible cold caller, and I'd be like, "Hey, this is Colin from AltaStream. This is when I was selling diesel generators and selling renting. We did like hybrid power solutions to mines, data, hydroelectric projects, and I would say Colin from AltaStream. But in Canada, or maybe it's just in Vancouver, there's another company, and I think they're like in phone and like internet infrastructure, and they're called Allstream, and they're huge. And so I was instantly getting an objection, be like, "Oh, sorry, we don't need any phones." And I'm like, so I'm getting an objection, and I've only introduced myself. I'm like, dang it.
Yeah.
So I always had to, that was always like starting the conversation with like, okay, well, I'm actually from Alta Stream, like alternator. We're in diesel generating, blah, 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 because people were ready to hang up based on a misunderstanding. I ended up dropping that and just jumping right into something else. But I remember very vividly that conversation. I also remember when I was first prospecting, reaching out and doing, I guess, customer development interviews for the tool we built called carb.io. And when I was doing the customer development interviews and when I was doing initially like the first sales calls, we were basically, it was like well, I mean, what sales loft and outreach are. We were probably 2 years, maybe a year, 2 years behind, and a couple $1 million in financing behind them. But it still wasn't like very well known. And so when I was talking to people, they would always think that it was a CRM system. And I'm like, no, it's not a CRM system. But they were throwing me these like CRM system, like we already have Salesforce. Oh, actually, we work really well with Salesforce. So it's just always these like misunderstandings of you say one thing and they're latching on. It almost seems like they are looking for a way to say no in the very beginnings of the call.
Yeah. So you mentioned a couple things they're calling, I think are extremely important. One is that you were getting objections like not interested, and you were actually thinking about, well, how could I prevent this from happening? Like, how are people categorizing me and what are they thinking about? And how can I just lead with that? Hey, this is Colin with carb.io. We're not a CRM solution. We're actually something else that works alongside of your CRM. But hey, I know I probably caught you in the middle of something. You got a minute, I can tell you a little bit more about it. And what we found when we were doing some research on you can let me know if you want to keep chatting. Like you're building it into like the front part of your cold call, which I think is super important. And the other thing you kind of alluded to was like when people say not interested, it's no different than walking into a mall when we could actually do more of that, I guess. And like the people in the kiosks like approach you or try to talk to you. Like we're conditioned to just be like not interested. You don't even know what they're doing. You just hear, oh, salesperson, product I probably don't need, not interested. So when someone says not interested, I'll oftentimes, Art Sobchak wrote a book called Smart Calling. He calls it a reflexive response, which I really like. So if you can just like not take it too personally and just think like, hey, this person is like just saying what they probably say to every other person that calls them. It's nothing about me or what I'm selling or anything like that that they're not interested in. This is just something that people are programmed to do as salespeople. So let's look at the framework. And this is where I could use a little bit more help in the chat. I'll go through some of the more common objections and how to handle them. And by the way, this approach works through email. It also works, of course, through cold calling, which is kind of the lens I'm going to talk about it in today. But we're going to go through the most common objections. If you could hit us in the chat, is there an objection that you get? That would help as I'm going through this exercise so that we can walk through some of your objections. So the EVO framework, that's an acronym, empathize, validate, offer. And essentially where we can go wrong when we're objection handling, oftentimes we start at the end, like with what we want. Right? We go on like with our ask for, well, hey, can I just get 30 minutes of your time? Or hey, I only need 5 minutes on your calendar. I can talk right now or I can talk later. We oftentimes start with what we want, and we need to start with like what the prospect needs. So we have empathize and validate, and I'm going to dig into like what this sounds like here in a second. But when we do these two things together, that's going to do two things for us. That's going to disarm the prospect, and it's going to help us have a better understanding of where they're coming from. It's going to get them to open up a little bit.
Awesome.
So there's
We've got one from Tim here. If we want
Sure.
to just, so whenever you want to build that in, we've got a couple
what do we
here,
got?
and we got one from Hebran as well.
What do we got?
So Tim is saying, we already work with a partner for that.
Okay.
And then we got one from Hebran. Budget is set for the year. Circle back next year.
Budget. Okay. These are all really good common ones. I'm going to go with like kind of the shallow objection to get started with, like the not interested one, and then we'll work back into these other two.
Cool.
Okay. So what we need to do here to empathize with someone, we need to talk to what we think they're feeling, what they're thinking. So Colin, when a prospect says not interested, like for you, like what do you think is like on their mind? What do you think that they're thinking?
I think we're talking in the context of a cold call.
Yep.
I think they're probably not paying attention quite yet.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
So they're not paying attention?
I mean, I think it depends on what part of the call that we're at, right? If I'm at the very front of the call, then I'm not interested. Like, is like a go away, get me. I just want to get off the phone. I'm busy. I'm doing something else.
Yep. Go away. I'm busy. Another thing too, I don't know if you've ever had this happen before, where you're expecting a phone call, maybe from a vendor that you're about to start working with, or your lawyer or whoever, and you pick up the phone and you thought it was someone else, and it's a salesperson, right? So maybe they thought you were someone else. So what we need to do is we can use a phrase like this. Sounds like. First part of this, Colin says not interested at the beginning of the call. Hey, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something. Right? That's the I'm busy part. Right? That's all we need to say. Hey, Colin, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something. Because that's likely what it is. We're going to acknowledge that. The second thing we're going to do is validate. And we can use a phrase like this. I'm a really big believer, by the way, in I'm going to give you samples of words to use, but I'm a really big fan of using the process to come up with your own language. So try not to focus too much on like, I'm not sharing any magic words with you. And when I run through these examples, I'm going to do it slightly different every time because it's not about memorizing like the scripted response to not interested. So now I'm going to validate. I want Colin to feel like it's totally okay that he doesn't want to talk to me and that I don't need him to like talk to me. So not interested. Hey, Colin, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something, which is totally understandable because I'm totally cold calling you out of the blue here. Any variation of that, I'm going to acknowledge that I probably caught him in the middle of something and that it's totally understandable if he doesn't want to talk to me right now. And what this has is like a really interesting, like disarming effect where the person feels like they can relax a little bit. And like, okay, like this person's actually paying attention and we're having a dialogue. He's not just going to come back with his rebuttal, he or she. Then we can go into the offer piece. So there's kind of like two ways that you could do this. I'm a really big fan of, and Chris Voss kind of popularized these like no-oriented questions. I'm going to write a LinkedIn post about this. I think that we've gone way overboard with those questions, but there's like a couple simple ones that you could use. Okay. So variation like number one that you can use is you can do the would it hurt? And then you can go into your permission-based opener. So this works if, because you mentioned, Colin, you alluded to like the timing of when you get the objection. So if you were getting it like when you were making calls, like right at the beginning of the call where you don't even get to say anything, that's where this first one's going to come in. Hey, Colin, sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something, which, is totally understandable because I'm totally calling you out of the blue here. But would it hurt while I got you on the phone here? I did some research on you. If I got a minute to just tell you why I'm calling, and then you could let me know if you want to keep chatting. Right? Very kind of Sandler kind of popularized upfront contracts. It's kind of a variation of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do my permission-based opener. So I want to go ahead and stop there. Colin, I know you like to give really honest feedback. What do you think of that in terms of like from the prospect's point of view, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I love the permission piece. I'm thinking through the last cold call I received, and I thought I was waiting for a call from my son's doctor. And so I was like, I don't care what you say. I don't want to be on the phone right now. And so it's like, sounds like you're waiting. I'm like, yeah, I'm waiting for a doctor to call. Like, I'm not even going to pay attention. I'm just going to hang up, right? Because it was an important call. So I'm like, that's probably the absolute worst time to have ever cold called anybody, because I have no interest. No, usually I'll give a cold caller the time of day, but in that specific instance, I was like, no. And they were trying to steamroll me, which is like this and this and that, and they got the hang up and the block the number, because I'm like, if you call me back, it's just gonna, yeah. They call, when they call you back from like sales software outreach and they're using a local dial and they just pick up other numbers and other numbers, that drives me insane. It's like, then I'm going to answer and tell you to get lost.
Yeah. So if you had answered and you said, "Oh, I thought you were the doctor," I'm thinking like, well, what's Colin feeling? Like, he's probably being like, dude, like, WTF, right? Like, dude, I can't talk to you right now. I'm just going to say that. Hey, dude, Colin, sounds like you were totally expecting a different call. Totally understandable if you don't want to chat with me right now. And then I wouldn't ask for your time again. I'd say, hey, when would be a better time to talk? When would be a better time to try you? Right? You don't need to push like every single time, especially when it's something like that and it's legit. Like, hey, I was waiting on something else that's honestly just way more urgent than anything you could possibly say to me right now. So maybe your offer in that case is just, hey, is it all right if I call you back at another time?
Yep, I probably would have said yes to that.
Yep, and then that way we don't burn a bridge.
Yeah, don't burn a bridge. And if you would have said like, but if you're trying to lock down and going further than, hey, do you mind if I call you back again? I probably would have locked up and been like, no. If you're going for like, do you mind if I call you tomorrow? If you said, I think if the offer was like, do you mind if I call you again? I'm a yes. If it was, okay, I'll call you back tomorrow at the same time, I would have said fine. Because I'm just trying to like optimize for this call needs to be as short as possible.
Yep. So like any variation of that, as you can see, it's like, dude, this is like the being human part that everyone keeps talking about, which is, I don't know how you feel about that phrase. It feels so weird to me to say be more human, because like we are human.
Yeah.
But
sort of binary.
Yeah, it's very strange. I don't know. But like actually going for the connection and like really think about how's that person feeling. So option number 2 with not interested is, let's say this happens later in the cold call when we've kind of given our pitch a little bit, had a couple questions, the person's like not interested. You can use an approach. And if you're watching this from the LinkedIn post that I put up yesterday, this is that approach. You looked a lot like, that's where we can do something like this. So if into your pitch, Colin's like, hey, actually this is I'm not interested in this, man. Hey, sounds like you might be taken care of, which is totally understandable. Hey, this might be a long shot. I do like using that phrase a lot. This might be a long shot, but you looked a lot like this other company, ABC company, who was having a challenge with like really just getting their reps to pick up the phone more and like kind of overcoming the call reluctance piece. And was I totally off in reaching out to you, or would it hurt if I shared a little bit more about what I found when I was doing some research on you guys? So I'm going to allude back to, and this works really well through email. I see it working. When someone just replies not interested in an email, hey, got it, not a problem at all. I was reaching out because you looked a lot like this company and this person who was having this problem. That's where case studies come in. You can link to the case study. Hey, was I totally off in reaching out to you here? Or would it hurt if I shared a little bit more?
I love
the option.
I love the qualifying for relevance piece. That's awesome.
Yeah. So again, like you're showing them like, I did my research. Like you look a lot like this other company, and make sure that company that you mentioned and that case study you mentioned is in the same industry, ideally with a similar persona that you worked with, like all of that good stuff. And I didn't preface our conversation today with this, but you guys, this is not going to work every time. Okay, this might get like you an extra 10 or 20% boost in meetings you wouldn't get anyways. So if you did this 10 times, it might only get you a meeting like once or twice. That's a huge win over not getting those meetings. So
2 out of 10 is much better than 1 out of 10.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's also hard to notice when it's working and not working, because it's still going to not work the majority of the time.
Yeah. Yep. It's still not going to work. And honestly, like a lot of this is like the repetition of doing it so that you just get comfortable. Like, so if someone says not interested, it shouldn't be like, oh, heart starts racing. Like, what do I say? Hey, you know what you're going to say and how you're going to address it. And it's not going to work out every time, but at least you can feel really, really good about, I know how I'm going to handle this situation. Okay. So let's talk about the already taken care of. This is the one, I already got a vendor. We already have a solution for this. We do it in house, or hey, we use your competitor, whatever it might be. This is a really tough objection to handle as well. And you're totally like, again, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10 times you might get something from this, but that's a really hard one to handle. So empathize. So Colin, what are you thinking as a prospect when you get cold outreach and you already have a solution in place to handle that? What are some of the stuff going through your head in terms of like, what are you thinking when someone tries to prospect to you for a solution that you already have something in place for?
I think the most common one I get is either data suppliers or like an outreach clone. I don't mean that negatively, just like I built an outreach clone. So
Yeah.
no judgment there, obviously.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about data suppliers, my first thought is like, is the team happy, unhappy with the current solution? Am I happy, unhappy? And then what is the complexity to sort of unwind this beast, right? And actually bring in. And if I get a very quick, I'm like, if there's no initial like, oh, the team is absolutely up in arms, and if I'm not absolutely up in arms, like if there's no immediate pain, and it's wrapped pretty like the integrated pretty tight into our organization,
Yeah.
then it's probably like a no, not interested. If there's any sort of cracks in that, like, hey, we're actively exploring, then I'm going to be a little bit more open to that. But
Yeah.
that's kind of the 3 stages. Like, is the team complaining about it? Am I unhappy with it? And then how tightly integrated into the, like, how much of a pain in the butt to change this out is that
Yeah.
going to be?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned exactly what I hear. Like, because one thing I do with our clients, if it's a consulting engagement, is I will interview my clients' clients, and I'll just ask them questions like this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hey, if you said this objection, like, what are you thinking, right? And they say the exact same things. You know, I'm probably either already happy with a vendor that I'm using, or I'm thinking, have I heard anything about anyone complaining about this? Or, you know what? Like, we have something and it's good enough. It's just, it will take way too much time and there's too much complexity in like rolling out a new solution and then vetting you and like all this other stuff. So let's just say that. So if Colin's like, hey, like I'm set, dude, sounds like you might be pretty happy with your current solution. And that's totally understandable because I'm sure having been in the position for X amount of years that you have, that it's pretty complex to roll out a new solution. That's it. That's all I'm going to say there. And I could also handle it in a different way. Hey, sounds like you might already be taken care of, which is totally understandable. And I bet you're wondering, why would you want to continue talking to a person selling another thing that would be really complex and take a lot of your time to roll out? So I totally understand if now's not the best time to talk about it. And then I go into the offering. And there's a technique that you want to use here. So David Priemer, this is sort of inspired by him, another Canadian, Colin. David Priemer wrote a book called Sell the Way You Buy. Really cool dude, but he talks about this like love-hate dynamic, which is really interesting. So if you're selling software, one thing that I recommend that's a really good hack is go to g2.com, research your competitors, and find out and summarize the 4 and 5 star reviews. So what do people really love about the platform? And then summarize the 1 and 2 star reviews. What do people really hate? So you could do something like this. So I worked with a company. I can't like say the name of the company, but their number one competitor is Microsoft Teams. So one thing that that gives you any ideas. So they get this objection a lot. We're already using Teams. So we'd say, hey, sounds like you're already taken care of, and that's totally understandable. I'm sure being the director of IT for 10 years at ABC Company, that it's like really hard to roll out a new video solution. But this might be a long shot. While I have you, I'm curious if you don't mind sharing. A lot of times, what I hear about Teams is like people really like that it integrates with a lot of tools. But one of the things I oftentimes like hear complaints about is that like the whole mobile app solution is just really not very user friendly and it drops calls a lot. What's your experience been, Colin? So I'm going to allude to things that people like about it and things that people don't like. And you know what? Every now and then, Colin's going to be like, actually that does happen a lot. I've been getting a lot of complaints about that. Well, hey, like I said, you definitely know what you're doing. You've been doing this for a little while, but I wouldn't be doing my job unless I asked you, would it hurt to share how some of our customers are solving for those challenges right now. And then you could decide if you even want to keep talking further or not. I was just hoping I could get a conversation with you started around it. And again, that's not always going to work, especially if someone's super happy with it. But um, I have never, with any of the clients that I've worked with, their prospects have never been 100% happy with their current solution. There's always something
Mm-hmm.
that is left to be desired. I'll go ahead and pause there. What are your thoughts, Colin, on this objection and how to handle anything you would change, add, anything like that?
I think this is a great way. I love the G2 crowd approach. The hardest thing about this is going to be picking which one you go with in terms of like the love hate. I mean, love is the easiest one because it's usually fairly obvious, but hate is going to be something that you're going to want to test out and find like, okay, well, with this, is there particular personas within the people that I sell to that are more or less likely to say yes or to be interested in this particular or to hate this particular piece of said solution.
Yeah. So you could also get like more like generalities like on solutions like that, just in general, you know? So if you're selling a service, um, a professional service, clutch.co is a good site, but any review site that like reviews companies like yours and your competitors, you might need to step out a little bit and be a little bit even more macro, you know, and like kind of comment on like things going on, you know, in the industry. So yeah, you bring up a good point there. If you can like really well research common competitors that your people are probably using and like even ask your customers, that would be the second thing. Like if you think about, I know we got SDRs today, but if you could talk to your AE and say, hey, like the last like 6-12 months worth of deals that you've closed from the people that have moved from a competitor to our solution, like do you remember like why they did that or what they complained about or like anything like that? That's also some really good intel that you can bring into this as well. Cool.
Yeah, I love that piece. And I think especially effective of like, and going back to your customers in terms of like finding out why they made the switch to probably help
Yep.
calibrate which ones of those that you're going to use. I'm trying to think through like the old how I would handle old objections, and this is good stuff, man.
So that's like the already taken care of one. We can go through the budget one. I don't know how are we doing on time,
Yeah,
Colin?
we're doing good. Probably got another 15 minutes here, and then Jose's got another one for us to add. You know, you ask them how their process is going, and they say it's going well. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I think that so this is a different topic actually. If you ask someone how their process is going, I don't think that's a very good question to ask in a cold call. And the reason for that is I have a concept, I call it question stacking. So with question stacking, what you want to do in a cold call that you got to be really careful with is if you ask a question that's like too open-ended or is just too easy to be like, it's going good, like where do you go after that?
Hmm.
So what I would want to know, and the question stacking part, where the stacking comes in is you put context in front of the question. So you do context plus question. I'll give you a really easy example first. Oops. So a common thing that we might want to know, let's say we're selling a sales engagement tool and we need to know if the company like is using HubSpot or Salesforce.
Hmm.
So if I'm in a cold call and I'm like, oh, hey, do you use HubSpot or Salesforce? That sounds like a qualifying question. And it's like immediately in a cold call, you're like, dude, like what's going on here? Like, what am I committing to? If I stack context into that question and I say something like, hey, Colin, I'm really curious. Sales teams that are around the same size as you, like typically use like Salesforce or HubSpot or some CRM like that. What are you guys using? It's a much easier question to answer, and it sounds a lot friendlier than, hey, Colin, do you use Salesforce or HubSpot? You know, it's like you don't got to cut straight to the chase. So you ask that process question. What I would do is like for context, like talk about a problem that people commonly have with the current process that they're having. So I'll give you an example. I have a client. They sell like outsourced customer support. So they'll work with companies like Keen, Yeti, like really big consumer brands that get overwhelmed with customer support requests and they can't get back to them fast enough. So the problem they help with is you can't get back to them fast enough. You can outsource this stuff to us and we can do it on demand versus you having to hire. So what they do is they actually mystery shop customers to get the response time before they reach out to them. So they'll say something like this: "Hey, Colin. First off, big fan of ABC brand, and we actually mystery shopped you guys. And one thing I was really surprised to find is it took us 30 hours to get a response. And I know that like things are really busy right now. You probably have a lot going on with your team, but I'm curious, like, how does that normally compare to what you see the rest of the year?" So I'm like asking this question, like I put a challenge into the first part of the question to give Colin context into like where I want to go with this, and then I asked you an open-ended question around that. So my advice, I'm forgetting your name because I can't see it here, but my advice would be ask a question around the problem that people typically have with their process, and then ask them how their process is going after that. Like lead them in the direction that you want like to go with your question.
Hmm. Great advice. Great advice. I want to make sure we leave time for, I know we had some of the other ones in terms of like budget, not interested. So we've kind of worked through the Evo methodology. What are your thoughts on sort of next steps in terms of going back to those?
Sure. Yeah. So you want to go back to the budget one?
Yeah, because I think
Cool.
this is a common one that people probably end up getting. Yeah, I mean, I think if we look at this in terms of the conversation stages, I feel like we started with the early stages of a call where we are talking about just not getting people to hang up on us, right? And I love the sort of empathize, validate offer. I'm curious in how it works. So let's pretend we've got past the brush off, and now they've given us a chance. We said, hey, the reason I'm calling is, and let's pretend it's something relevant, and then we explain, we give our pitch. Hey, the reason I'm calling is yada yada yada, and they go, yeah, we don't have budget,
Yeah.
or yeah,
Yeah. So again, I'm going to think like, I want to empathize with this person. What's someone thinking that doesn't have the budget? Like what's going on in their world? Well, they might be like super stressed out. Things might not be going well. They might be thinking, well, hey, we've actually had to get more out of our team. So we've had to do more with less resources. Um, if they don't have budget, they also might be thinking like, hey, my boss is going to think I'm a complete idiot if I come to them wanting to spend money right now. So we need to like address all of those things when we empathize and validate. Um, hey, Colin, sounds like the timing might be totally off on this. And I imagine, because what I'm hearing from a lot of customers, just like you, because they're saying something very similar, is you're probably trying to squeeze as much as you can out of your current resources right now, and it would be like totally bad to like go to whoever like to try to ask for budget. So like totally understand, all good. And this might be a long shot, but I was calling you in hopes that I could share how some of the other companies that we're working with are like getting more out of their existing resources so they don't have to ask for more budget, and how our solution is helping with that. I mean, would it hurt if I just kind of shared a little bit of that with you, and then you could decide if it makes sense to like keep chatting or not? So same kind of thing. Like I
hmm
can actually use the stuff that they talked about, like, and build that into the offer. I want to make you feel like you're not alone, or that things are going really bad for you because you don't have budget. Like there's a lot of people that don't have budget right now, right?
hmm
So I want to address those things, and then I can go into like the offer piece. So just be empathetic to like how you think the person is feeling about the budget. Try not to go straight into, we don't have the budget. Oh, well, hey, I'm not trying to sell you anything right now. Like that kind of approach doesn't typically work that well in my experience, especially when I listen to people on recorded calls try to handle them that way. It doesn't usually work that well.
hmm Yeah, the whole the fastball approach, or the like, just I think there are times where it's appropriate to kind of do the duck and weave because they're kind
Yeah.
of missed. But I'd say most of the time, just trying to sidestep the objection and say, oh, then that's not what I'm talking about. You get back into that infinite loop that you were
Yep.
talking about before.
Yeah, that's why like the deflecting, I'm not a big fan of that, like deflecting the objection and just ignoring the person and keep on
Mm.
and then keeping moving. Dude, that's never worked on any executive. Like any VP or C-level person's like really on the ball, and if they say they don't have budget and you try to deflect it, like that's just going to be a huge turnoff and an insult, really, to their intelligence. So empathize, right? Empathize with the person. Try to think about what it feels like if you're running a department and you don't have budget right now because things are not going that well.
Totally. We got another one from Matthew Guest. We already do that in-house.
Yeah, so that's kind of like part of the already taken care of objection. Same kind of thing. Hey, sounds like you guys might be taken care of. And I'm sure you're wondering why, like, why would we want to consider like any help with this if we're already doing it in-house, right? That's the empathize and validate part, right? And then you can go into the, hey, this might be a long shot, but sometimes what I hear, with folks doing it in-house is that they really like this part of it, but sometimes they don't really care for this part, or this part's a lot of work. Like, what's your guys' experience been? And get them talking about, like, what are the parts that they really like about it? What are the parts that they don't really like about it? But that's a very, very similar objection to this already taken care of one.
And I like how I think you're addressing one of my favorite parts of the the Miller-Hyman method in terms of like buying modes. There's the sort of, as I described, there's like the in sort of in a buying mode, there's basically not in buying mode, and then there's kind of, which is like even keel, and then there's like problem ignorant, right? Where like I don't know about the problem and I'm ignorant, and like you can't really. And this is old. This is like fairly old. It was written in like the 70s and 80s, and I think the most recent version I read was in the 90s. I love the Miller-Hyman method. I grew up on this. The thing that is important to point out here is that we don't have the ability to influence people to change their mind. What we are doing through the highlighting the best parts of these pieces that Jason is bringing up is helping latch on to pains and challenges and things that already exist in their life. We're sort of doing that discovery, that detective work, as opposed to trying to manipulate or convince or change people's minds. And I think that mindset was something that took me a little while to realize and understand.
Yeah. No, that's so important, man. The one last comment I would have on that is like, you could use this "you looked a lot like" approach too. Hey, sounds like you guys are taking care of this in house. And, Colin, I looked at your LinkedIn and you've been in this position for 15 years. So you definitely know what you're doing, man. This might be a long shot, but you looked a lot like this other company, ABC company, who was doing it in house. And one of the things they just like kind of complained about was this. Was I totally off in reaching out to you, or is this like, would it hurt to share a little bit more about what we're doing with companies like yours?
Mm-hmm.
And there's work that into. I'm a big fan of working customer stories into prospecting as well.
Totally. I mean, it does a number of things. It tells the story through the lens of, hey, we've got a prospect, which sort of displays that that you have valuable other customers, especially if you can name drop them and they're recognizable brands like competitors of Teams. Those are super. You're accomplishing, like, you're throwing so many different pieces in that one very simple sentence, which I love about that.
Yep.
So last couple chances, chat. If you have more objections that you want Jason to help you work around, get them in there now. We'll throw them in, and then we're gonna move in about 5 minutes. We're gonna bring in the winner of SDR week, crown our I don't have a good word for that, winner, so to speak, and and go from there. So Jason, help us wrap up this sort of Evo framework. And I know we talked a little bit about empathy. Is there anything that we've missed so far here?
No, this is it, man. I think the big thing that you could do, like the big action item for you, you guys watching this, is like pick like maybe your top 2 objections that you get most when you're prospecting, and run through this exercise of what is the person likely thinking? Like, what's going on in their head if they said this? And if you don't know what that is, talk to like your AE or whoever sells to these people too, or talk to that job title at your own company. If you sell to CFOs, send an email to your CFO and say, hey, I'm making a lot of cold calls and getting lots of objections from people like you. When you say not interested to someone, what are you thinking? When you tell someone that you're already taken care of and you don't need that software, like, what's going on in your head? Right? So I'd really figure out like what they're thinking, and then you need to acknowledge that. And if you can say those things, even if you miss the mark on this, they're still going to see that you're attempting to like try to understand it, and they might correct you, which is actually a really good thing if they correct you. And then go into like, you need one customer story that would relate to the people that you're reaching out to. And this is where like good case studies and stuff come in. So having those 2 things, you can get started on this framework pretty quickly.
Fantastic. Last chance to get your objections in. We've got another one from Emily. Just send me the info. So this is a great blow off. I'm sure we've all heard a version of this. Send me something, send me the info. How do you handle that?
Yeah. So again, what's the person thinking when they say send me the info? This is kind of like a not interested,
Hmm.
kind of objection. So I'm gonna respond, hey Colin, dude, happy to send you info first off. And I'm sure you get a lot of calls, from folks like me, and it sounds like I, might either caught you in the middle of something or might not be the best time to chat. Um, but while I have you on the phone, would it hurt if you shared like maybe one or two things that you're working on related to X, Y, and Z, so that when I send you more info, that there's some really good stuff in there for you? And then if they talk about a few of those things, you can have a conversation around those problems too. So I'm just going to let them know, hey, I'm happy to send more information over to you. Sounds like I might have caught you in the middle of something, which is totally understandable. But hey, would it hurt to share one or two things that you're working on related to this problem or this outcome, so that when I send the info over to you, it's going to be stuff that's relevant for you.
Perfect. I love that. And if you're Dale Dupree, our guest from yesterday, he would offer very similar advice, and then he would say, send them a box of absolutely everything you have in your closet, like physically mail it to them. Like, did you get it?
Yeah, I love the empty donut box. Did he talk about that yesterday?
Yeah. Just
Genius, dude.
this is the meanest thing I've ever seen.
Hope that helps you guys out. A lot of these objections, again, like just think about what the other person's feeling and thinking, and just address that. Don't be afraid to address it. Have a little bit of fun. I like to smile, and just like, you don't have to be super serious when you're objection handling. Try to lighten the mood up a little bit.
I love that. Jason, thanks for sharing. We're gonna take a minute and bring in our winner of SDR week, and just if you're not the person in the other Zoom, I just want to thank you for participating in SDR week, for throwing your submissions in there, for asking good questions, for showing up in chat. We're doing this for the SDRs because we wanted to highlight the fact that SDRs don't get a day. And so we wanted to create a week because obviously we think you're awesome. You're a really essential part of the sales role. And I think historically maybe a little undervalued. And so we just want to take a minute, highlight you and all the good work. This is one of the hardest roles in sales, if not one of the hardest roles, period. And hopefully you got something out of this week that'll make next week and hitting your commission and your quota just a little bit easier. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for participating. And if you didn't win, if you're not hanging out in the waiting room, please come back next time, check out some of this content. And I bet if you listen to some of the content from this week, you'll have a very, very good chance at getting into the finalists for next time we do this. So final thank you. And let me introduce, and I'm going to have to get give me a second here. Drum roll, please. Wait till they get their video going.
Hello.
Frankie King, welcome to the show.
Hi. Hi, thanks for having me. Hi, Colin. Hi, Jason.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank you. Very unexpected and exciting way to end the week. Yeah, it's been a really cool week. Thanks for putting on this event. I've learned so much. And thanks for choosing me as the winner.
Fantastic. And chat, can we get some ones in chat just to celebrate Frankie and what a great job she did this week. Really appreciate showing up. And I just think it takes guts to share some of the messaging. And I think a highlight for me was Joanna, who had shared sort of who was really open about her experience on one of her first cold calls where she actually hung up, the first pickup, and they hung up.
Yeah, I voted for that one.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really great story.
That was amazing. Yeah. So that we had a lot of great submissions. It takes guts just to show up, just to submit your stuff. So everybody in chat, I'm expecting to see your names in the submissions next time we do this. Frankie, so for those that weren't here yesterday, remind us how you won, and because Jason wasn't here either, remind us of the template that got you the winner, and maybe I think the subject line that got you second place in an earlier in the week.
Yeah. So the email template that I guess I got second place for was a cold email. So you send an email subject line as a cold email, and you basically point out the fact that they probably get a bunch of cold emails every day. And then you just kind of go into it, and it's actually my highest open rate. So definitely steal it, give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. And then the other one was the creative aspect. And I wrote a poem for the CMO of General Mills and sent him a poem because I listened to a podcast that he was in, and he talked about how he likes poetry. And so I thought I'd give it a shot. And he responded and he loved it, but it didn't turn into a meeting. It turned into this long-term relationship where we're still going back and forth, and hopefully eventually it'll convert.
I thought you were going to say we're married now. It's like, wow, that's a
Oh
powerful
God,
poem.
no. No, but it actually has turned into a high quality relationship, I think.
That's
Not
amazing.
that high quality.
It's so interesting how like such a simple, like thoughtful first touch now has created this relationship between you and the CMO that, one, hopefully you will eventually get their business, but two, if they ever change jobs, or if you ever change jobs, you've built this relationship. You're a known entity by this person. So you've always got that door is always open.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Definitely.
Jason, how many poems have you written today?
I was gonna say, like, what kind of poem was this? Like a haiku? Like what? That's pretty impressive.
It was definitely rhyming, and
okay.
that's all I can say.
Would you care to recite the poem for us?
Oh gosh. Yeah, sure. I can recite the poem. Okay. Here. Have you ever imagined a world where you never missed out on market share, where company could not only predict but prioritize every consumer shift? It's not enough to know what they're thinking now. You need to see the future, what, why, and how. Right now, CPGs lose $3 billion a year because the trends they thought were gold actually disappear. Would love to chat when you are free about how to never miss another opportunity.
Cool.
So my companies were predicting trends. So that's how that ties in. Yeah.
I think it's a pretty big deal to get any kind of response from a C-level person at that company as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's my target audience. So they're very hard to get in touch with. You got to get as creative as possible.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Especially when like you're competing against people that have unlimited Sendoso budgets. And like, I know people that they'll just straight up, they've got a specific type of smoker and they'll just send it to the office. And it's like, here's a $3,000 smoker that you probably don't have. And in it is like, hey, would you take a meeting with me? Like,
nice. Yeah.
The fact
definitely can't do that.
The fact that your poem created that relationship, a very, very valuable poem, because to get one meeting out of those smokers, you probably got to send, 5 smokers. So that's probably like a $10,000 or $15,000 value of a meeting.
Right. I definitely recommend everyone trying to practice their poetry skills on some prospects.
We tried opening with haikus, opening cold emails with haikus. We probably did about 20. Pete's not here. He's on holidays. So yeah, I think Pete did it. We did about 20 or 30 a couple years ago, and we had a 0% response rate. But we weren't going quite to like CMOs. It was more VP of sales titles. So maybe less creative, or I don't know. I shouldn't cast any dispersions about us sales leaders and what we are and are not into. But I love the relevance of you had identified and done the research that they are somebody who is interested in this thing, and then you said, okay, I'll play in your space.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You can't expect everyone to appreciate a good poem.
Perfect. Well, I think that's an amazing spot to bring SDR Week to a close. Frankie, congratulations.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Your crown,
Thanks
I guess,
so much.
is in the mail. I'm not sure if we have a crown, or I think Julia and the team have something for you.
Okay, cool.
And Jason, thank you so much for being here and sharing. I love the framework. I love that sort of just staying out of that infinite loop. I think if anybody takes anything, if you only take one thing away from this conversation, it's staying out of that infinite loop. But I think there's some really good nuggets with the going to G2 crowd and using the empathy and sort of your Evo framework. I love that.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for having me, and congrats again, Frankie.
Thank you.
People like you out there doing the job every single day. So hats off to you. Seriously, I learn just as much from the companies I work with, from the individuals doing the prospecting, than like they learn from me. So hats off to folks like you.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, thanks to everybody that showed up in chat. Thank you to the marketing team and the revenue team here at Predictable Revenue that put this on. And finally, thank you to all the SDRs. You're the reason why the salespeople's calendars are so busy. You're the reason why our companies are hitting our targets. You're the reason, why companies continue to be able to open up new markets. There's so much that you do that helps the revenue team go around. And we appreciate you. Thank you for showing up this week. And best of luck next week. We'll see you all soon.